Chapter 12. A Future Worth Belonging to. The story of humanity has always been a story of return. From wandering tribes to modern cities, every generation has searched for the same thing, a place to belong. We've built empires and economies trying to secure it, yet somehow, it keeps slipping through our fingers. Perhaps the future we're searching for isn't built with new technology or greater wealth. Perhaps it begins with something older, the courage to build connection as infrastructure. A future worth belonging to starts when we decide that healing, not power, is the measure of progress. The blueprint for a healed society. If domestic discrimination and emotional neglect have been silent engines of poverty, crime, and corruption, then the reverse is also true. Inclusion and empathy are engines of prosperity. A healed society isn't a utopia, it's a practical, working system built on 5 principles that mirror the human nervous system. Principle. Societal function. Effect. Safety. Laws and environments that protect without oppressing. Low violence, high civic trust. Transparency. Open communication between citizens and institutions. Accountability, reduced corruption. Participation. Equal access to decision-making and opportunity. Social cohesion, innovation. Compassion. Systems that prioritize care as much as profit. Reduced inequality, better health. Adaptability. Willingness to evolve policy and culture through reflection. Resilience to crises and change. These 5 traits describe not just a moral ideal, but a neurological design, the same principles that govern healthy brains, govern healthy societies. When fear dominates, systems become rigid and reactive. When trust flows, systems become creative and self-correcting. Healing, in other words, is the politics of biology. Reconditioning the collective nervous system. Every culture has a nervous system. Its media, schools, families, and governments form the synapses through which collective emotion travels. When those synapses transmit fear, misinformation, or exclusion, the social body spasms. When they transmit curiosity, honesty, and empathy, the body regulates itself. Reconditioning society begins with reconditioning its communication. That means replacing propaganda with transparency. Teaching emotional literacy alongside literacy itself. Encouraging public dialogue that values nuance over outrage. These are not luxuries. They are how a civilization keeps its sanity. Education as emotional infrastructure. Education is where the next generation learns what normal means. For too long, we have treated schools as factories of intellect rather than gardens of humanity. A future worth belonging to will teach empathy as fluently as math, and cooperation as intentionally as reading. Children will learn conflict resolution, mental health awareness, and media discernment alongside history and science. Imagine classrooms that reward curiosity more than conformity. Where students are taught not just to think critically, but to feel ethically. Education that nurtures emotional intelligence is the vaccine against future corruption. Economics of empathy. We can no longer afford an economy that profits from disconnection. The cost of burnout, addiction, crime, and polarization outweighs the temporary gains of competition. In a reconditioned society, economic systems would measure success not only by GDP, but by gross emotional product, trust, inclusion, creativity, and well-being. Companies that prioritize employee well-being and social responsibility already outperform their peers financially. Empathy is not an expense, it is compound interest in human form. Imagine an economy that rewards restoration where housing, healthcare, and employment are structured to strengthen communities, not isolate individuals. Belonging pays dividends. Justice as rehabilitation, not retribution. In the future we are building, justice systems will not just manage harm, they will metabolize it. Prisons will evolve into rehabilitation campuses. Courts will focus on restoration victims, offenders, and communities working toward repair. This is not softness, it is strategy. Restorative justice programs worldwide have shown lower recidivism and higher victim satisfaction than punitive models. When people are treated as capable of redemption, they behave accordingly. Justice built on shame reproduces trauma, justice built on dignity ends it. Technology as tool, not tyrant. Technology has connected us globally but isolated us emotionally. The next era of innovation must focus on depth of connection, not breadth of reach. Imagine digital platforms designed around mutual support instead of comparison. Algorithms that elevate compassion rather than conflict. AI used not to replace human care, but to facilitate access to it. Technology can either amplify atrophy or accelerate healing it. Depends on what we teach it to value. The role of art and culture. Art is the nervous system of civilization. The place where emotion and intellect meet to create meaning. In a healed future, artists will not just entertain, they will interpret, translate, and remind. Music, writing, film, and community art will continue the work of collective therapy. Holding mirrors to society, not to shame it but to evolve it. Every great social movement has had an art form as its heartbeat. Art gives recovery a language the soul can understand. Governance as service. A healed society does not need perfect leaders. It needs honest ones. Leaders who see power not as privilege but as stewardship. Who treat transparency as duty and compassion as policy. Imagine governments where emotional literacy is a prerequisite for office. Where town halls feel like dialogues, not performances. Where policymaking begins with empathy, not ideology. The politics of healing begins where the politics of domination ends. Global empathy and shared survival. Belonging cannot stop at borders. Climate change, migration, and inequality have proven that humanity's nervous system is global. When one region suffers, the rest eventually feels it. The next evolution of civilization will depend on our ability to expand empathy beyond tribe, nation, and creed. Global cooperation is no longer idealism, it is infrastructure for survival. The same way our ancestors learned to live in villages, we must now learn to live as a planet. Signs of the shift. This transformation is already beginning. You can see it in community-led mental health programs in Canada, South Africa, and New Zealand. In trauma-informed schools in the U.S. In reconciliation initiatives among post-conflict nations. In corporations adopting well-being metrics. In youth movements that prize inclusion over ideology. These are the early neurons of a new collective brain forming small, scattered, but firing in sync. Healing has gone global, the future is remembering itself. A personal reflection. When I think about belonging, I think of the first time I laughed again in recovery, that moment when something small reminded me I was still alive. That laugh was not just mine, it belonged to every person who had ever believed I could come back. Healing is never solitary. It is a relay, each of us carrying the torch a little farther toward the light. The future worth belonging to is built exactly that way, one honest connection at a time. The moral of the book. We began with domestic discrimination, the invisible cruelty of exclusion and neglect. We traced its consequences through personal despair, social decay, and systemic corruption. And we followed the trail of healing through science, empathy, and reconditioning. Now we end where all true stories end, not with perfection but with purpose. If disconnection is the root of our suffering, then reconnection is the root of our salvation. A world that practices belonging as medicine, accountability as love, and empathy as infrastructure will not only survive, it will thrive. That is the future worth belonging to. Closing dedication. To everyone who has ever felt invisible. You are not broken. You are waiting to be seen. To every family that lost its way. You can find your rhythm again. To every nation built on pain. You can build peace with the same hands. Because the truth of humanity is not our cruelty, it is our capacity to heal. And every act of compassion is an architectural blueprint for the world we still have time to build. End of chapter 12, A Future Worth Belonging to. Domestic discrimination, the direct contributor to poverty, crime, and corruption. How psychological atrophy and disconnection shape society, and how belonging can heal it.